There is a seed that you have probably seen at the supermarket. It costs almost nothing. Most people walk right past it without giving it a second thought. But what studies show about it is something few doctors ever bring up during appointment. Research published in leading scientific journals has documented reductions in blood pressure comparable to some medications. And there is data about what it does inside the arteries that completely changes the way you see this food. My name is Thomas Ellsworth, and throughout the time I have dedicated to studying cardiovascular health and healthy aging, few things have surprised me as much as what science has documented about this food. If you are not yet subscribed to this channel, take a moment and subscribe now. It is worth following. We are talking about flaxseed. And I know what you might be thinking. Flaxseed? Isn't that just bird food? That is exactly the kind of dismissal that leads millions of people to give up on one of the most studied foods for heart and arterial health. But before I get into the details, I need to explain something that most people do not know about what happens inside the arteries as the years go by. Atherosclerosis, which is the buildup of plaque in the arteries, is not simply fat clogging a pipe. That explanation is too simple, and because of that, it is dangerous. What actually happens is a sophisticated inflammatory process. It all begins when the inner wall of the artery, an extremely thin layer called the endothelium, suffers some kind of injury. It can be chronic high blood pressure, elevated blood sugar, or the oxidative stress of everyday life. When that layer is damaged, it opens a door. And cholesterol, specifically oxidized LDL, what we call rusted cholesterol, penetrates through that door and begins to deposit itself. The body then sends defense cells to try to fix the problem. These cells, called macrophages, arrive, attempt to engulf the fat, and get trapped there, loaded with lipids, forming what scientists call foam cells. It is that accumulation that forms the plaque, and it is that process that silently, over years, narrows the arteries and raises the risk of heart attack and stroke. The problem is that it does not hurt. It gives no warning. It keeps happening while life goes on as normal. And that is exactly where flaxseed comes in a way that very few foods can match. It does not act on a single mechanism. It acts on three at the same time, and each of those mechanisms has been studied independently in serious research with results that surprised even the researchers themselves. Before I show you how this works, let me ask you something. Have you ever tried to include flaxseed in your diet and gave up because you saw no results at all? If the answer is yes, there is a very specific reason for that. And I am going to show you what it is. Flaxseed has three components that work together in a way no other food replicates. The first is vegetable omega-3, known as ALA. 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed contain around 3.5 grams of omega-3. To give you a sense of what that means, 100 grams of salmon, considered one of the richest sources of this nutrient, contains between 1.5 and 2 grams. In other words, we are talking about a nutritional density that surpasses one of the most valued fish in modern nutrition in a food that costs a fraction of the price. The omega-3 acts directly on the inflammation of the arterial walls. It reduces the production of inflammatory substances, helps stabilize existing plaques, and improves the flexibility of the vessels. But that is just the beginning. The second component is where flaxseed becomes truly unique. Lignans. Flaxseed has the highest concentration of lignans of any food on the planet. No other plant comes close. And lignans have a specific function that goes right to the heart of the problem. They prevent the oxidation of LDL. Remember the rusted cholesterol I mentioned? Lignans are what block that process. Without oxidation, LDL loses much of its power to infiltrate the arterial wall. It is like taking away the key to the door I mentioned before. The third component is soluble fiber. And this is where something happens that I really enjoy explaining because it is almost a biological trap in the best sense. When ground flaxseed comes into contact with water in the digestive system, it forms a viscous gel. That gel acts like a sponge inside the intestine, capturing cholesterol molecules that were being reabsorbed by the body. The liver, sensing that available cholesterol has dropped, is forced to pull more cholesterol from the bloodstream to keep producing bile. The practical result of that is a real drop in LDL levels in the blood without you needing to take anything beyond water alongside the seed. That is why hydration is not optional. It is part of the mechanism. Now let me show you what the studies say, because this is where things get truly serious. The FlaxPad study, published in the Journal of the American Heart Association, followed patients with peripheral arterial disease in a double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial. The result was a reduction of 10 millimeters in systolic pressure and 7 millimeters in diastolic pressure with the daily consumption of 30 grams of flaxseed. To put that in perspective, that is a reduction that many first-line medications aim to achieve. And the study also identified something that surprised the researchers. Flaxseed inhibits an enzyme called soluble epoxide hydrolase, which acts directly on the contraction of blood vessels. That means it works through a mechanism that most people, and a good portion of health professionals, simply do not know exists. A meta-analysis published in 2024 analyzed 5 randomized studies and confirmed an average reduction of 8.64 mmHg in systolic pressure. In 2025, another meta-analysis covered 18 studies with more than 200 participants and validated the consistency of those results, specifically in people with hypertension. And the largest of all, with 33 studies and more than 2,500 participants, established that the best results appear after 12 weeks of continuous use with daily doses of 30 grams. This is documented. This is not guesswork. And the first effects on blood pressure can appear within the first week, but the deeper protection, the kind that acts on plaques and inflammatory mechanisms, requires consistency. Barbara had struggled with high blood pressure for years and had cholesterol that simply would not come under control. She was on medication following her doctor's basic guidance, but her lab results were not improving the way anyone hoped. When she started including properly ground flaxseed in her diet, something she had never done the right way before, the results 3 months later surprised even her own doctor. It was not a miracle. It was biochemistry working the way it was supposed to. Barbara's story is not an isolated case, and there is a very clear reason for that, which I am about to show you. There's a study conducted in an animal model published in the Journal of Nutrition that demonstrated a reduction of around 40% in the formation of new atherosclerotic plaques. And beyond that, the data suggested the possibility of regression of plaques that already existed. That deserves particular attention because for a long time it was believed that once a plaque formed, it was there permanently. Science is revisiting that idea, but I need to be honest with you here. Those results were obtained in animal models, and extrapolating them directly to humans requires caution. What we have in humans, confirmed across multiple meta-analyses, is a reduction in progression and an improvement in the inflammatory profile. That alone is already extraordinary. Now I am going to tell you about something that turns everything you just learned into real results or into complete waste. Because there is a mistake that most people make, and it causes all the science I just showed you to never come close to working in your body. You probably already have an idea of what it is, but the right way to do this is going to surprise you more than you expect. The mistake is simple, and it is made by a huge number of people who try to use flaxseed. Eating the whole seed, it seems harmless, but from a nutritional standpoint, it is a complete waste. The human digestive system does not have the ability to break through the flaxseed hull. It is too hard. What happens is that the seed goes in whole and comes out whole, exactly as it entered, without releasing any of the compounds that make all the difference. The omega-3 stays locked inside. The lignans are not absorbed. The fibers never form the gel. It is like having the medicine in your hand and never opening the package. The second mistake, and this one is less obvious, is buying pre-ground flaxseed meal from the supermarket. Most people think they are making the right choice, but omega-3 is extremely sensitive to oxidation. When the seed is ground industrially and placed in a package exposed to light and air, the rancidity process begins long before it reaches your home. You end up consuming a product that has lost much of its active potential, and in some cases, you are ingesting oxidized fat, which is exactly the opposite of what you want for your arteries. The right way is to grind it at home, fresh. You can use a regular blender, a coffee grinder, or any small food processor. 15 to 20 seconds is enough to turn the seeds into a fine powder. That powder should be stored in a dark, tightly sealed glass jar, kept in the refrigerator, and consumed within 1 week at most. Grinding a small amount at a time is the best approach. There is no point in grinding a month's supply at once thinking you are saving time. You will be wasting what matters most. The dose established by the studies is 30 grams per day, which is approximately 2 heaping tablespoons. But if you have never consumed flaxseed before, do not start with that amount. The digestive system needs time to adjust to the volume of fiber. Start with 1 tablespoon in the first week and increase gradually. That avoids the discomfort of gas and bloating that many people experience, and that ends up making them quit before seeing any results. And alongside the flaxseed, drink a generous glass of water. It is not optional. It is what activates the soluble fiber mechanism I explained earlier. You can mix ground flaxseed into almost anything: yogurt, oatmeal, smoothies, juice, cold soups. The important thing is not to expose it to very high heat, because excessive temperature degrades the omega-3. Using it in warm preparations like soups, adding it after cooking, is acceptable. Baking with flaxseed inside recipes for extended periods is not ideal if the goal is to preserve the cardiovascular benefits. Now, there is one point I cannot leave out, because ignoring it can be dangerous. If you take blood thinners such as warfarin, flaxseed can amplify the effect of those medications, increasing the risk of bleeding. That needs to be discussed with your doctor before making any changes. Likewise, people with a history of oxalate kidney stones should be mindful of high consumption. And if you have any active inflammatory intestinal condition, the introduction should be done with medical supervision. Flaxseed is a powerful food, and like everything powerful, it needs to be used with intelligence. What I showed you today is not a promise. It is published science, peer-reviewed, replicated across multiple studies around the world. a common seed available at any grocery store that acts on 3 simultaneous mechanisms in your arteries and that most people either ignore or consume the wrong way. The difference between results and frustration in this case comes down to a detail that fits in the palm of your hand. Now tell me in the comments, did you already use flaxseed and had no idea you were making that mistake? Or had you never heard about these studies before? I want to know your experience. And if someone close to you has high blood pressure or high cholesterol, share this video. It might be the information that makes a difference. If you haven't liked it yet, hit like now. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. See you in the next one.